There we go. I'm Melinda Rowe. I'm the team lead of Research Advancement Services within Knowledge Enterprise. We are a team of research administrators that provide administrative proposal support to somewhere between 80 to 90 different units across all 4 ASU campuses. So when it comes to research and sponsor project, I have seen quite a bit. So today we're going to go over places where you can find opportunities for external funding. There are a wide variety of external funders here at ASU. We have corporate partners, we have philanthropic partners, we work with federal funding quite a bit. So we're going to touch on a few different things, and then I'm going to workshop a presentation of one of our funding search tools so you guys can see where that is, get a little sense of how you can use it. And if you have questions as I'm going through things today, same goes for the online audience, please let me know. I'm happy to answer as we go along. So first, I want to introduce you guys, if you haven't already seen it, to funding.asu.edu. This is an incredible resource run by the research development team within Knowledge Enterprise. And they're continually updating the site, adding information, adding events. So there are ways to set up notifications from this website, but it's a great place that if you haven't checked it out and explored the website, I would encourage you to do so. Today we're going to focus on limited submissions and finding funding opportunities. So limited submissions. A lot of times we get questions, what is a limited submission? So that is when a sponsor, so I'm going to use the term sponsor to refer to anyone providing funding who is external to ASU, might put in their funding opportunity announcement or their request for proposals that there's a limit of 1 proposal per institution, which means here at ASU, we are one university with many campuses. So that means if there's a limit like that, 1 proposal can go out from all of the ASU faculty. So we have our limited submissions team. They run different competitions so that ASU can submit the best proposal. Now I will say, when working with your research administrator, we are trained to look for these things. So if you find an excellent funding opportunity and you see requirements or restrictions that you're not sure what they mean, share it with your research administrator. We're more than happy to review those things for you. And if we find a limit, it's happened to me many times, I'm like, hey, it looks like there's an institutional limit. Let's work with our limited submissions team and we'll get everything squared away so we can submit proposals. So know that we're here to help. You can search the limited submissions site. They just redid the page, so I'm getting used to everything again. But you can also search internal competitions. ASU does have some internal funding competitions, but a lot of things on the site are external to ASU. All right, now where we are going to spend the majority of our time today. So sponsor search tools. There are many different sponsor search tools. So we're gonna focus on a few of the big government ones, NSF and NIH, because they have some pretty robust tools, but I will also put a plug in for the first proposal development series workshop about landscape analysis. The research development team did a great job of discussing how to use some of the tools that NIH and NSF put out there. I know LJ is working on getting that recording up on the website. And so when that recording is up, I encourage you guys to check it out because I'm not going to go as in depth to those tools. So here's NSF. You can just go to nsf.gov, and at the top you'll always see that large dark blue bar. And if you click on funding, you can search like you're searching Google in this first page, or there's an advanced search. So if you know your research area, you can come in and search by your research area. If you know a keyword of the title, the funding opportunity title, maybe it's Smart and Connected Communities, you can come in here and do the advanced funding search. NIH also has great information, and I should plug that most sponsors have Twitter feeds, listservs that you can get on. So if there's a sponsor you're continually working with or applying to, you might want to check out and see if they have an opportunity for you to sign up and get notified about new opportunities. So this is the example of the NIH listserv. They have a weekly email that comes out. And you can also search funding on NIH. I would encourage you, if you are looking for NIH funding, nih.gov is much easier to look through than grants.gov. Grants.gov can be very confusing, but it makes sense to a research administrator because it's nearly all administrative data except for the funding opportunity announcement. So sponsor searches might be more easily understood from the faculty point of view if you're searching the sponsor website. Philanthropic funding. So like I said, ASU receives funding from a wide variety of different sponsors. And as we see federal funding changing, organizations receiving different budgets than maybe what have been in the past, some programs being retired, we've seen a big shift here at ASU looking in the foundation and looking at philanthropic opportunities, leveraging some of those corporate sponsors that have philanthropic arms that do community engagement. So one amazing tool we have here at ASU is Foundation Directory Online. Here's what it looks like. It is available to any faculty, staff, or student here at ASU. The subscription is maintained by the library, so you can just go on the library website and find it. It's just like searching any other database, but the cool thing about Foundation Directory Online is you can search sponsors. So what foundation out there might be willing to fund your project? So you can search by subject area. So if you're working on a secondary science education curriculum development project, you can search that. I would encourage you to list something in the geographic focus. Foundation Directory Online is pretty comprehensive, and there are philanthropic sponsors who don't fund in Arizona. And so we want to make sure we're getting the best search results possible. This will come up when we're going through the tool again. If you know the organization name, that's great, but you don't need to know that. Foundation Directory Online also recently made a change to include US federal funders. I would uncheck that box because we have many other ways to search for federal funding that are more robust and might give you more information than searching here. I like this for finding a funder that you may not know exists out there who would be willing to fund your work. If you are considering a philanthropic opportunity or wanting to speak with a philanthropic sponsor, I would encourage you to talk to your research administrator and talk to your director of development, because it could be ASU has a strategic partnership with a foundation, for example, MasterCard Foundation. We get lots of funding from MasterCard. We have lots of programs with them. So a $200,000 grant versus several million, sometimes ASU Foundation looks at those relationships and there are just decisions that are made so we can handle them in the best way possible. So here's a sample of what information you can find out from Foundation Directory Online. So here you can see the services that Arizona Community Foundation funds. You can see here, Arizona has the biggest amount of grants from the Arizona Community Foundation, and you can even check out and see how big their grants are. So if you know you can't do your program for less than $20,000, and let's say everything is under $5,000, you then know that maybe this isn't the best fit for your work. All right, some of the customizable search tools. We have Deltek and GovWin. That is for federal contracts. When we talk about sponsored project funding or external funding, there are three mechanisms that we see. We see grants, which means we're telling the sponsor how we want to do the work. We see cooperative agreements where the sponsor and the awardee work together on a common outcome, and contracts where the sponsor is telling you they want a service and you are merely providing that service. But keep in mind, all three of those can come through ASU and can come through a sponsored projects. So we're going to spend a lot of time in Pivot today. I do want to touch on dimensions. It has historical funding. So one thing is you're starting to research sponsors and research who might fund your work. You can look at historically who has funded work that is similar to yours. And it's a tool that you can check out, start using. I found it to be a robust tool as well, but I tend to focus more on the funding search side of things. So here's an example of a contract from Dell Tech. There's also another website that is transitioning out, and I can't remember the new one, but FedBizOps is where we find contracts as well. That's very much the equivalent to grants.gov. So you can see here, there's a solicitation number. The duration is a 5-year base. It's a full and open, unrestricted competition, meaning it's not being sole sourced. They aren't picking one entity to do that specific work. And this one is pretty broad. So, Pivot, yay, I love Pivot. So this is formerly Community of Sciences, you might have known it as. It causes a little confusion here at ASU because we do have other Pivot tables that come out from the Knowledge Enterprise. So when I say Pivot, I mean the Pivot funding search tool. So we're gonna go over how to set up your account, what a profile is, how to do quick searches, advanced searches, what to do with your results, filtering, and then how to save and track opportunities. This part I drive in Pivot because I find it best to show you guys how to use the tool as we're moving along. So I'm going to take a seat. So hold on one sec. Here we go. So I'm at funding.asu.edu, and you can see here Pivot. There are a few different pieces of information. I'm going to present a lot today and give you a lot of information. If you forget anything about Pivot, don't worry. I've had it written down. So in Research Academy, in the Getting Your Research Started track, you can see a web demonstration of how to do all of the basic steps, and they're broken down into 5-minute or less videos. So if you need a refresher, you're like, she told me how to do my profile, but I can't remember it. You can go to researchacademy.asu.edu and it's in there. So you would click login, or you could go to pivot.proquest.com. and it takes you to a page like this. It kind of looks like you might be logged in, but you're not. So everyone with an academic appointment here at ASU should have a profile in the system. You still will need to create a login. This isn't tied to your ASU right. So if you want to do firstname.lastname@asu.edu as your login, you can for Pivot. So if you're new, you just pop in to sign up, and it's pretty easy. Don't do the use institutional credentials. ASU doesn't use that functionality of Pivot yet. Just go ahead and do use email or create a password. I'm gonna go ahead and log in, and just a little disclaimer, I have admin access, so my view will be slightly different than when you all log in, but generally it'll be the same. All right. We are going to start with profiles. When you log in, you'll see your name up here. You can click it and you can see your profile. If it's the first time you've logged in, you might see a little button that says claim your profile. If you happen to be at ASU and you don't have a traditional academic appointment, because ASU is a bit of a different university, Pivot hasn't quite caught up to our innovation yet, then you can just create a profile. Anyone, students, staff, faculty, grad students might already be in here, but anyone can have a profile and can use the functionalities of Pivot here at ASU. So I'm going to show you guys a bit what a profile looks like when it's done a little more comprehensively. And I will put in a plug for Pivot. Often leadership wants to do landscape analysis, or they want to see what expertise we have in Pivot. And so when our, or just what expertise is here at ASU, when our competitive intelligence team in research development gets those requests, the first place they go is Pivot. So if you want to start showing up on those requests for expertise, come in here and make your profile within Pivot. But we are going to go ahead and check out Ponch's profile, since he is our leader in Knowledge Enterprise. It's kind of like a Facebook profile, but for research. So it's very intuitive. You will see a button that says Edit Profile when you get to your profile. It walks you through all the steps. But you can list a variety of web pages. So you can see Ponch has listed his center as his personal website. He has also updated his publications to the center page. And he's listed his iSearch profile page for his CV, since there's functionality to list your CV on there. He has detailed out some of his expertise. Affiliations are listed. Once again, if you're an academic professional here at ASU, you might have affiliations already listed. If you were at another institution that used Pivot, it still might show your other institution. Things take a little while to shift over. But if you run into any issues, I'll give you guys my contact information at the end of the session. I'd be more than happy to help. You can see he has past affiliations. Communities are just like groups on Facebook, but research oriented. His degrees, keywords, languages, and associations. So you can make your Pivot profile as detailed or as blank as you'd like it. I will say though, in addition to the research development team using the profiles, Pivot can also work for you through your profiles. So this is called your advisor. So if you set up your profile, I say, give yourself an hour to really think through it, mull things over what you want to go into this page. Pivot will start pulling opportunities for you based on the information that's in your profile. Now, Pivot is a tool, it's a system, it has AI, but we always have to be smarter than the tools, right? So when we do these funding searches and we click on the advisor, there might be things that don't apply, but it found one keyword and so it pulled in that opportunity. So you can always come into your advisor and say, I only want to see calls for research. Well, now you're down to 78. It's a much more manageable load. You can say, I only want to see US federal. And here you are, you're down to 48 results. So very quickly, by completing your profile, you can do a search that Pivot kind of does for you and have access to results. Any questions about profiles before I move into the funding search? Yes. So exactly. The question was, is there any way to link your Pivot profile to LinkedIn or other services? So Pivot does have an integration with ORCID IDs. So you can use your ORCID ID and link it, and then it will pull your publications and whatnot. Unfortunately, I'm not aware of a LinkedIn or another professional social networking site integration within Pivot. So, but I will keep my eyes out for that. And the team at ProQuest does do a lot to maintain the tool and enhance the tool. So I have ways to offer suggestions for future enhancements, and I can go ahead and offer that one up because that would be very time saving, knowing that you all have lots on your plates. And yes?
One other idea might be just Google Scholar, because their paper search engines are pretty, at least for my area of research, they're pretty good.
So yes, you could link to your Google Scholar page within these. You could also link to your LinkedIn, but as far as integrations, Orchid ID is the one they have chosen.
So even if we link Google Scholar here, it won't show up under the publications tab right there?
I don't believe so,
okay.
No. Pivot does do a lot of background searching for publications. And what it will do is, if you have a common name like Joe Smith, it might not automatically pull publications, but it will give you pending publications and say, hey, we think we found some publications or grants that might be yours, and you'll have the opportunity to review them. If you have a name like Sathurman Panchanathan that is much more unique, Pivot might have an easier time pulling in publications and grants. It's not perfect, but it's a really good place to start. The other thing about profiles is they are somewhat outward facing. So any organization that subscribes to Pivot, people can come and find collaborators, and I'll show you that functionality in a little bit. So some strategic partnerships we have here at ASU, the Plus Alliance, King's College London, and University of New South Wales are subscribers to Pivot. So you can find fellow colleagues at those institutions who might be able to collaborate on opportunities with you here at ASU. Any other questions about the profiles? All right, great. Moving into funding searches. So this is your quick search page. You can come in here and let's say, I know I want to find a US federal funder, and let's see, I want to look at NSF. You can come in here quickly and find NSF opportunities. Just like we did with the advisor, you can come in here and search, well, I just want to look at curriculum development opportunities. We're down to 93. And I just want to look at science education. And now we're down to 21. So that didn't take us very long to get to a much more manageable, rather than 300 opportunities to sift through. Now there are 21s to look at. You see right here, this one does say limited. So I mentioned limited submissions when we first got started. So this is one that does have an institutional limit. This particular opportunity, I believe it is still one per institution, and we actually got one last year. So there might be additional limits if ASU has received an opportunity. And that's another reason to talk to your research administrator or your unit research advancement staff. And I'll show you guys quickly at the end of the workshop where you might be able to find those people, because we have access to all of the proposals ASU submits and systems, and can look through them and see if we are eligible. So if there are eligibility requirements that you're concerned about or you're not sure, ask your research administrator. All right. One way that Pivot does a lot of its work is keywords. And so here you can see right now within Pivot, there is almost $71 billion of funding, either actual or forecasted, because Pivot will forecast opportunities that come out year after year. So if we're looking at education, there's $12.5 billion. If we're looking education, and here we go to science education, there's environmental education. We'll just do science. you now have a funding search again with just a few clicks. So if we want to just look at curriculum, we're down to 250. And if we just want to do community or outreach, we're now to 43. So the little pictograph on the front page is a very useful tool to do quick searches. I like it because I work with a lot of non-traditional research units, and when folks tell me that they don't do sponsored projects or there's no funding out there for them, I pop over to Pivot and find their keyword and take a screenshot. Say, here's how much funding's in Pivot, let's go look. Where I spend the majority of my time doing searches is the advanced search. So like I said, the quick search is very much like searching Google. You'll get a lot, you'll get anything and everything. If you search biology, everything with biology linked in some way, shape, or form will pop up. If you do small business, it will search small and business, and you'll get 20,000 opportunities, and it might be overwhelming. So the advanced search gives you a way to think through it a little bit more. So I'm going to go through all of these sections, explain what they mean, and then we'll play around and do some funding searches. Thank you all for adding a few keywords up there so I can play with them. So up here we have your free text keywords. So these might be the words you pick to identify your research area or your sponsored project area that you want to find funding for. So it might be big data, it might be cybersecurity, but there's another keyword section that we'll get to that is the pivot generated keywords. So this is your free text. The amount. So this goes back to the idea of, I don't think I can do my project for less than 20,000. Or I know I need at least 5,000 to do a scope of work that'll give me pilot data. So you can use this. I like to build my searches to not be too restrictive, because you can be too restrictive and get no results. But I'll show you ways you can still use searches like that. Deadlines. ASU is extremely flexible with our deadlines. Unlike other universities, we don't have a hard and fast, if you don't get us your proposal by this day, we won't submit it. I know that my team, if we get something day of, we will drop what we are doing and we will process it. So where this comes into play is you might be working with a collaborator that does have a much stronger institutional policy. For example, I know there's a very large research institution that if their central office doesn't get it 10 business days before the sponsor deadline, they will not submit it. So if we're working with a collaborator like this, it is important to be aware of deadlines so we can give them time to complete the work they need to complete so we can keep them on our project and continue to foster that collaboration and the work together. Limited submissions, we've touched on this a few times. It is not as essential for you guys to know about this. I would suggest not limiting your funding searches with limited submissions. Like I said, your research advancement staff can help you with that. Activity location. We touched on this a little bit with Foundation Directory Online, but because Pivot has international opportunities, it does have philanthropic opportunities and federal opportunities, we don't need to see the Iowa Foundation that only funds corn research in Iowa. We don't care about corn research in Iowa because we're in Arizona. So we need to just, I always put Arizona and then United States. And you'll see it actually clicked into unrestricted. So sometimes when Pivot gets opportunities, they're marked as unrestricted. So those are funding opportunities that we want to take a closer look at. Citizenship and residency, this comes into play often with the Department of Defense, or you might see it with DARPA. ASU cannot do classified research. We do have a separate legal entity, the ASU Research Enterprise. I think Assure is how I know them, that is able to do classified research. But do keep this in mind that if you aren't a permanent resident, or maybe you have a grad student who isn't, or isn't a citizen, that is something to be aware of if you're hoping to find work that could be funded. Funding type. So this goes back to where we were talking about grants, cooperative agreements, and contracts. ASU is very flexible and can accept nearly anything. So if you are looking for contracts, you can search just for contracts. Maybe you have a large cohort of grad students you're supporting, and you'd like to see if there are opportunities to help them out with their dissertation or their thesis. You can look for dissertation opportunities. There are grants for equipment and materials acquisition. So if you need special instrumentation and you have to build that, there are opportunities to help fund getting some of those pieces of equipment. Maybe you're looking for a postdoc. So you could look for postdoc awards. The list goes on and on and on. Keywords. This is where the pivot keywords come into play. So like we saw with that pictograph on the first page, these are just those keywords in a list. And wherever you see a little arrow, you can click down and find more keywords. Let's say you wanted to look at agriculture, but then you accidentally clicked on arts and humanities. You can just close this, and there are little X's, and you can get rid of them. So again, this is where you can become too restrictive with your funding searches. So we're sticking with some of our education keywords, and we're looking at those. We can see that we've drilled down, and this will keep everything that's above in the hierarchy, so education, secondary education, that we drilled down on. And we'll now have the pivot pulled keywords, which I'll show you how those work in the funding opportunities, and they have even more functionality than they do in the profiles. Applicant type. ASU is an academic institution, but we can be a 501c3. We can be a 501c3 that accepts federal funding. We can be a lot of different things. We have a lot of, we have a group called the ASU Enterprise Partners, and that includes ASUF, Assure, another entity. They changed their name, but they were the Research Collaboratory at ASU. But they just allow us to be able to accept funding in all shapes and sizes. You can also look at potentially early career awards or awards for graduate students. Finally, we have sponsor type. This list looks very similar to the list above it. But if you know you only want to see funding from federal agencies in the US, you can do that. You can also do national governments that's non-US, so those would likely be international. Private foundations, we can see what's out there. Now the gray section will exclude anything you select from your funding search. So let's say we aren't looking for dissertation awards. We aren't looking for early career. We can mark those as excluded and see what we get. So we've gone through all of these. We've made a pretty basic advanced search. We're going to see what we get. 1. That's okay, because you can come up here and save this search. If this is the perfect search for your project, you can come in here and save it. And you see this little check marks. Would you like to receive a weekly email containing new or updated ops from this query? So you made your perfect search, but there's only one opportunity right now. Never to fear, Pivot will alert you when new opportunities are uploaded that match your search. If you don't want to receive weekly emails, then it wouldn't be that you would get an email every week. It would only be on weeks where a new opportunity matched that search criteria. I will show you in a minute how you can find these saved searches if you don't want emails or maybe you've changed your mind and would like to do something more. So let's go back to our advanced search and give something that gives us a little more information. Search big data and cyber. And we want the applicant type to be an academic institution. And we're just going to do the United States because I think I can do my project in other places. Man, I am being too picky today for Pivot. Normally I get searches that have quite a bit more, but you can see here, we still have all of our filters. And we're going to pop into this Air Force one so you can see the funding opportunity page. So one reason why I really like Pivot is because the information about the funding opportunity is condensed down and you can find it without having to click into a funding opportunity, click into another sponsor website to read their rules. It's all right here and you can quickly evaluate and look at the abstract. All right, here's what the Air Force is looking for. That matches me, that doesn't match me, you can then move on to something else if it doesn't work for you. For me, this helps to streamline the funding search process so that there's not all that redundant clicking. And you can see here, there's quite a bit. Eligibility, again, quick little snapshot of who's eligible to apply for the opportunity. And then keywords within the funding opportunities are clickable. So if you're like, you know what, I really didn't think about searching military sciences and technologies, but that might fit my work really well. You click it, you have a whole nother search that you can then save and refine. So if we only want to see collaborations from other nonprofits, we have a new funding search. And again, you can come up and save. A couple other things to highlight within the funding opportunities themselves are the upcoming deadlines down here. Like I said, Pivot does forecast. So we saw with the last administration change, there were some opportunities that we saw year after year that then went away, but Pivot still had them listed. So you'll see down here, it'll say anticipated. That just means Pivot's forecasting it out. If it says anticipated and you're like, I really want to do this, this thing looks great, there is usually a contact information right here on this page for the sponsor. You can reach out to program officers and say, I found this opportunity. Will you guys be releasing the new solicitation in the coming year? Now, sponsors have every right to say, thanks for emailing us. We don't know. Or if you reach out sometimes about your idea, thanks, we look forward to your proposal. Sometimes they're limited in what they can share with us, but never be afraid to reach out to a program officer. I know in my job, it's pretty essential when I need clarification. I go to program officers and I will tell you the majority I've worked with have been very kind and they just want to help. So that is one thing if you do see something that says anticipated. Now I said you could also find collaborators. So here, like we have the advisor within your profile of funding opportunities, you can see there are 384 possible collaborators here at ASU and 500 or more from outside. So if you're looking to maybe strengthen your proposal with an external collaborator, we can come in here and again, you can filter. I want to add a legal expert to my proposal on military science and technologies. And I want to be sure they know US law, so I'm just going to look at US institutions. And here you have a list of others, and you can pop into their profile and say, ooh, this person might work. And then you just share the opportunity right there with them. You could also reach out to them directly via email. Hey, I found you on the Pivot Funding Search Tool. I'm looking at doing this opportunity. I think you could add value to my team. Please check it out and let me know your thoughts. I've never had feedback about how that has been received when other faculty have done it, but I think it can't hurt to ask. I'm a firm believer that if you don't ask, the answer's always no. So what can it hurt by asking? So that is one quick way. And now if you wanted to get back to either your funding search or that opportunity, there's a crumb trail at the top, and you can just click right back on your crumb trail. And there you are, you're back at the opportunity page. A few more details about the opportunity page. You can track opportunities. So let's say something did say it was anticipated and you just wanted to track it. This will give you a place where it's highlighted on your home page, which is where I'm gonna show you next. Technology. You can also share. So you can share with your research administrator right from Pivot. Hey, I found this one. I want to apply for it. Here you go. You can share it within there. And like I said, I have a few other tabs that you will likely not have just because of my level of access. Okay, so I've talked about a bunch of different things as we've gone through. Your home page is where you can find most of those things once you log in. So you can see your tracked opportunities. So these are the ones we want to see. So here's one, it says application anticipated. It's forecasted. It may or may not come out. Here in the saved searches, this is where you can pop into to find your saved searches. So you'll see a little email icon if you have email alerts on. If you want to turn email alerts off, you just click on options and you click alert email off. Very easy to turn it on or off. And you can also see in a digest view of what new opportunities there are. Shared, again, this is where you can see the opportunities that you've shared with folks. Received, and then the advisor. This is where I was talking about you have that funding opportunity link within your profile page. I wish they were consistent with their naming, but on the front page, it's called advisor, and you can just pop in here and go, oh, that looks great. I don't think that's exactly what I want. You can check it. You can track things, share it quickly. One functionality we, research development and the research advancement community here at ASU is using is exploring how we use curated lists. So these lists are available to anyone here at ASU. So I don't want to curate anything right now, but I want to show you how you can find curated opportunities. Here we go. So if you're in biodesign, the biodesign research advancement team has gone through and built curated lists for the centers. So I've been working with some of the research administrators to talk more about this function. Let's say there's an overarching theme. You're in Watts and there's a bunch of faculty who search criminal justice. And that's a big thing. So this could curate a list for you. So this is a thing to pop in and check, see if there are ones that meet your needs. There are some specific to researchers. So If you have questions about curated lists or you'd really like to see one, I can always work with your team's research advancement staff to see about the possibility about building out one of those lists. So that is nearly the end of my tour of Pivot. I want to plug one last thing, Papers Invited. So this is a newer functionality to Pivot they added a few years ago where you can search for special editions or where you can search for conference proposals. So maybe you got an internal award to help build out some pilot data and you want the opportunity to share out and disseminate your finding or maybe connect with other researchers or build up that collaboration. You can come in and see there are 720 conferences for electrical engineering or electronics, and there's one special issue. Be aware, they do keep opportunities with past deadlines in here. I think that's for historical data, so you can see maybe what a conference was looking for in the past if you want to plan for the future. It doesn't have an advanced search like there is for funding opportunities, so you would just click on one of the keywords and then filter. So maybe you really wanted to go present in Spain. Now you have 43 results where you can find stuff within Spain. Are there any questions? Yes.
So like again, like going back to Scholar, like that's kind of publicly available data. So for example, at the conference, whatever, it's like, okay, yeah, let's put it into Pivot, or is it just publicly available data that grabs?
The question was, how does information get into Pivot? And I will say I don't work for ProQuest, so I'm not 100% sure of all of their methods, but I do know there is both pulling and sifting through online data as well as a human element. So they do have staff that goes through opportunities and verifies them, maybe helps with keywords to teach their technology, what things to look for. So that is my understanding of how it works for them. No, it is pulled information. Yes.
I know there's the old saying that every good proposal stands a chance, but I know I've seen some foundations where they'll advertise everyone's eligible, but they'll tend to only fund people that are local to a certain geography, even though the announcement won't be restricted to that geography. Is there any way to find that out in Pivot?
So that is much harder data to find because whatever they put in their funding announcement, apologies, the question was, there are sponsors who put out open funding calls and who may only intend to fund in one certain area, but everyone appears eligible for their call for proposals. So Pivot doesn't have that functionality. What I would encourage you to do if there was no limit listed in the funding opportunity, pop over to Foundation Directory online and see where they're giving. If they're only giving in Florida and we're in Arizona, that might not be the best. But I did have one faculty member I worked with who gave me a really good metaphor for proposals, because we know our funding rate is not that great. ASU is higher than the national average, but it's still, when you look at pure numbers, 20% doesn't sound super amazing. And I may be a little out of my data, but one thing this researcher said to me, he came from the military, and he said, writing proposals is like doing a military exercise. It gives you time to practice, to hone your craft, and to take it and use it elsewhere. So I know it's discouraging to get rejections for proposals, but you've then spent that time crafting it, and you can take that proposal and tweak it into something else. And I believe there's more in the proposal development workshop series to come on things like that. Other questions? Any questions online? Yes, anyone who's here at ASU can use it. So Pivot training kind of comes from the staff within the unit. So research advancement staff should be able to help. And like I said, there's also that basic training on Research Academy, as well as this presentation is recorded. So someone could come and watch the details of how this is done and pick it up pretty fast. I will tell you, I didn't get formal training on Pivot, more so than here's funding, here's profiles, ready, go. I explored it quite a bit. I really enjoy the tool, and so I've become sort of the Pivot helper here at ASU. Hence, I do this presentation every year. So, any other questions? I promised you all I'd show you where you could find your unit research advancement staff. If you picked up any of the material we had in the back, this is listed on there, but researchadmin.asu.edu. You come up to who can help me, and you have to type really slowly. So if we're trying to find who supports Mary Lou Fulton, and it's spinning. It will. I promise you this does work. It's just slow. And it can be finicky at times. But here we go. If we want to find Mary Lou Fulton Teachers College. It will pull up the research advancement staff. There it is. So our tool does use our HR job titles. So you might see some folks listed that don't necessarily have research advancement in their title. That's okay. You can reach out to everyone on this list, or you can just reach out to one person. If you happen to see my name, then my team would support you, and I'm more than happy to help with whatever questions you might have. Anything else? Then just a few take-home points from today. Funding.asu.edu is a really great resource for you guys to use. Sponsor agencies do have their own catalog of funding opportunities. It might be a great, easy place to search to get started, but you can also search Pivot. Plug for the upcoming proposal development workshop. So you are here at the funding opportunities one. If you come back to budgeting, I'll be back again with some other colleagues from the Knowledge Enterprise Project Management Office. And then there's more that go throughout the fall semester. I encourage you, if you're new to ASU, if you're early career faculty, or you just want to learn more about this process at ASU, this is a wonderfully refined series of workshops, and there's a lot of great content to learn. Questions? So you guys can check out funding.asu.edu or researchadmin.asu.edu. If you didn't happen to pick any of the handouts up when you came in, please do. And I'm Melinda Rowe. So if you have any questions, you can reach out to me, and thank you.